procession or promotion of the true faith. Does that make sense? So if you're going to read Irenaeus, start with volume 3. It's another place.
Chip, excuse me, do the Gnostics still exist today?
Yes, believe it or not, there's a Gnostic church here in Los Angeles.
Wow.
And they take as their successors, because I actually went to a Gnostic service once. I wanted to see for myself what it was like. And they get dressed up, they look very much like Roman Catholics. But when they go through the litany of the saints, they talk about Saint Simon Magus, Saint Cyrenius, Saint Saint Cathal, and all of these heretics that have come down that Saint Irenaeus wrote about. He lists them in their litany of saints, because those are Gnostic saints. And I'm like, holy moly, what a mockery of our litany of saints. It was really quite eerie at that point, I have to say, because everything looked and sounded almost like a Catholic service. And when he went over that, I was like, holy crap, I'm a cracker. Am I hearing this right? Saint Simon Magus, he opposed Peter in the book of Acts. He's considered a hero in Gnostic circles. He was a magician, you know? I mean, it's really quite eerie. But yes, there are still Gnostics around, believe it or not. As I like to say, good heresies die hard, you know? But man, what a heresy. I mean, it is really a mockery of the Catholic Mass. The priests get vested. He had a mitre. I mean, he looked just, I mean, it was spooky. It was really spooky. So anyway, I wouldn't necessarily advise going to one of those services.
We're advised not to go.
Yeah, I would not to go. I went primarily as an observer for my mythology program when I was getting my master's degree. I wanted to see what Gnosticism was in modern times, if it was anything like ancient Gnosticism. And it was really quite eye-opening. It was really quite eye-opening. Anyway, Saint Irenaeus wrote about the scriptures, about Mary, about salvation. And so I just gave you a little bit of insight into that. Now, why am I even mentioning this? I mean, there's so many other saints that are more popular. What about Saint Anthony? What about Saint Anne? What about Saint Andrew? You know, anybody. When I was converting, in the books that I read that quoted from the fathers, the one father that came up more and more was Saint Irenaeus. And I actually had an introduction to him when I took my philosophy of religion class at Biola. I had a very good professor. He's now since passed away, but he spoke very highly about this early church father, and it was my first introduction to anyone who wrote anything after the Bible. When I went to Biola, I had no idea that there was this vast amount of literature of men, theologians, who wrote very close to the time of the apostles. And he's considered one of the best philosopher theologians of his time. In what I was studying, when I heard about Saint Irenaeus in philosophy of religion, we were talking about the problem of evil, which is a big topic in the philosophy of religion. And there are two major theories as to how to answer the problem of evil. And those two theories are because this is a perennial question that comes up every Bible study. There are two ways to address the problem. What is the problem of evil? Well, the problem of evil exists only for monotheistic religions. For what? What does that mean? That means if you're a Jew, a Christian, or a Muslim, you have to address the problem of evil. Buddhists and Hindus don't need to. Why? Because in Buddhist and Hindu thinking, evil is just a manifestation of the way the world is. It just is. You don't question it, it just is. The first tenet of Buddhism is life is sorrow or life is suffering. Get over it. They don't find an answer to it, they just say it is. This is how the world is. Next. Okay. Why? Because in Hinduism and Buddhism, it's just a matter, and even Zoroastrianism for that matter, it's just a matter, evil is just a part of the world. And ultimately, in Hindu thought, evil is just simply an illusion. It's not something that's part of the inherent bliss that's embedded in the world. It's just something that we experience that we have to overcome. But it's not part of the ultimate reality that's behind everything. I know it's a little complicated to think about that, but that's Buddhism and Hinduism. The whole goal of Buddhism and Hinduism is to meditate on that mystery of which all of this is simply an illusion too. Once you get to that ultimate reality, then none of this really matters, because you're one with the ultimate mystery. And in that, all is bliss. This is why we have 5,000 monks, 6,000 monks living in Tibet right now, chanting the Om to try and attain a connection to that ultimate mystery that's beyond words. What do you mean chanting the Om? That. They empty themselves of everything. See, the first tenet of Buddhism is that all life is sorrow. The second tenet is there is liberation from sorrow. The third tenet is the liberation of sorrow is nirvana. And the fourth tenet is the way to nirvana is the Eightfold Path. Nirvana is in heaven, by the way, in Buddhism. There is no heaven. Because in Buddhism, as in Hinduism, there's just an endless cycle of reincarnation. So the idea of being empty is so that you just are untouched by fear and desire, which are the causes of pain and sorrow in the world. Once you are no longer touched by fear and desire, then they can't harm you anymore. This is why the Buddhist posture looks like this. Do you ever see statues of Buddhism like this? Because this is desire, what you want, and this is fear, I don't want that. So the Buddha is in between both fear and desire. He's the middle ground in between them. Once you've transcended fear and desire by reaching nirvana, this place of stillness in which you are untouched by the samsara of the world, then you're in a state of bliss.
Is it a religion?
Yes, it's more of a psychology, really, but it is a religion. That's why I say the monks chant the Om. The Om is meant to get you in touch with that centeredness, that peace that transcends fear and desire. So they live a very aesthetic life because I don't want things that will make me lose things, so I don't have a lot of relationships because that's loss, that's pain. If I detach, then I don't have the pain. Yes?
It sounds like push-pull, the way you describe it.
Yes.
Push-pull.
In Freudian psychology, this was the death initiative and the love, or the erotic drive, pain and pleasure. Freud picked this up in the West, and he said what motivates human beings is pain and pleasure. We want to avoid pain and to maximize our pleasure. Well, in Buddhism, it's just getting rid of all of that. To get rid of the sorrow that's in the world, the pain that's in the world, you have to detach from the world because that's the cause of the sorrow. So in the East, they don't deal with the problem of evil because it's just part of the world. But in the West, monotheistic religions like Judaism, like Christianity, like Islam, says that there is an all-good, all-powerful God that is a personal being that created all things. Right? Isn't that what you believe?
Yes. Right?
Amen? Amen. And then the atheist comes to you and says, how can you believe in an all-good, all-powerful God when there are children dying of cancer right now in the oncology ward? You go tell them there's an all-good, all-powerful God that loves them. Go. What about that train wreck that killed 150 women and children and people that were going to work the other day? Where was that all-good God then? What about the volcano erupting in Hawaii?
Guatemala.
In Guatemala, or the earthquakes, or the fires, or the AIDS that's plaguing people and killing them, slow death, disease. You call that an all-good God? You've got to be crazy. And you hear atheists talk about the belief in an all-benevolent, an omnibenevolent, omniscient God as tantamount to believing in some guy who likes to hurt people. He's a sadistic God who likes to inflict pain on people. Otherwise, you can't explain all of this. How do you explain all the death, disease, and stuff that happens around the world? That's a good, loving God? Tell that to the mother and father of their child dying in the oncology ward right now. You talk to them about an all-good God, and then come back to me. That's what the atheist says. That's the problem of evil. In philosophy, it is said that the problem of evil is the bedrock or the foundation of atheism. Because all of you that believe in this all-good, powerful God that created everything, you have to answer. How come all those things? Well,
Because he gave us free will.
now you're describing the first form or the most popular form of answering that question, which is called the Augustinian theodicy. A theodicy is an attempt to justify God. Theo means God. To justify God or a belief in God in the face of evil. And in philosophy, evil is defined several different ways. There is physical evil, there is moral evil, there is natural evil, and there is even metaphysical evil. What are all those? Physical evil, sickness, plague, war, famine, all those things that, poverty, these are evils that afflict us physically. Okay? Moral evil, greed, adultery, betrayal. All right? These are moral evils that afflict us. All right? Moral evil, physical, natural evil. These are earthquakes, volcanoes, fires, stung by killer bees, eaten by a lion, okay? Falling off a cliff, okay? Falling off a cliff borders on metaphysical evil, which most people don't really consider. Metaphysical evil is just that. If I walk off a cliff, what happens? You fall and you kill yourself. If the world was as perfect as God made it, I should walk off a cliff and just and nothing would happen. If I'm chopping vegetables and I go instead the knife would go right through my fingers and nothing would happen. Right? If I'm riding my tricycle and I hit a bump, instead of going ah, I would just float off and land on my feet. Okay, that's called metaphysical evil. The fact that I can't do those things or that those things don't exist is an evil. But it's on a metaphysical level. It's not on a, we wouldn't normally expect that. Okay? St. Augustine's answer to this evil that's in the world and belief in God is this. Sin. The reason why, you want to know why there's evil in this world? It's sin. First with angels, and then with men. So don't go blaming God for the oncology ward, or the fires, or the train wrecks, or the killer bees that attacked you. Don't blame God for that. That is the result of sin. What sin? Well, the sin of Adam and Eve. They brought that upon us all, so you can blame them, which is another way of saying you blame yourself. You want to know about why there's evil? Well, look at yourself. You're the cause of that. Stop blaming God for your own problems. Well, I didn't create cancer or AIDS or diabetes or anything like that. No, you're right. But because Adam and Eve's sin brought a curse upon the earth because of their disobedience, we have those things. So indirectly, it's still human fault. So stop blaming God for your own fault. That's the most common and popular understanding of how to address